You think waking up at 6 in the morning is difficult? Try waking up at 4 in the morning in a straw bed infested with lice, fleas, and rats. Welcome to the year 1347, where the alarm clock is the sound of hysterical roosters and the temperature is either freezing or unbearably hot. There is no middle ground. You wake up and immediately regret it. The first sensation isn't visual, it's tactile. Something is moving along your leg. No, wait. There are several things, small, with many legs, and they definitely shouldn't be there. Congratulations, you've just met your bedmates. An entire family of fleas that considers your skin a free buffet, some lice that have built an entire civilization in your hair, and at least 3 rats that apparently think you're a particularly comfortable piece of furniture. Your eyes open slowly, adjusting to the almost total darkness. The only light comes from a tiny crack between the wooden planks that someone generously called a window. There's no glass, obviously. Glass is for rich people. You're entitled to a hole in the wall with a poorly tanned animal hide hanging in front of it. The freezing December wind enters as if it owned the place, and you feel every fiber of your body contracting in protest. The bed you're lying on is a masterpiece of medieval engineering. Imagine a crude wooden structure, and when I say crude, I mean the planks still have splinters capable of piercing leather, covered by a generous layer of straw. Straw that, it's important to mention, was harvested last autumn and hasn't been changed since then. In other words, you're lying on an aromatic cocktail of decomposing organic matter, rodent excrement, and what can only be described as essence of despair. The blanket, and I use the term very generously, is a piece of wool that was white at some point in human history. Now it's a color that interior design specialists would call indefinable brown with suspicious stains. It's rough as sandpaper and has the distinct smell of wet sheep mixed with human sweat accumulated over several generations. Each fiber is a small torture against your skin, but it's this or freeze to death. Difficult choices. You try to turn to find a more comfortable position, and the straw creaks as if it were screaming. The noise echoes through the hut like a medieval fire alarm. Immediately, other sounds join the morning symphony. Your younger brother coughing, a hoarse, deep cough that says pneumonia in medieval language. Your older sister mumbling something about back pain, and your father's epic snoring, which sounds like a mixture of chainsaw and wounded animal. Ah, yes, privacy. What a modern and interesting concept. You share this luxurious space of approximately 4 square meters with your entire family. Father, mother, 3 siblings, 2 grandparents who are still alive, miracle, and occasionally an uncle or cousin who shows up to stay a few days and ends up moving in permanently. Everyone sleeps in the same room because, technically, it's the only room in the house. The architecture of your residence is an impressive example of medieval minimalism. The walls are made of mud, straw, and hope. The ceiling is a masterpiece of poorly placed thatch that allows rain to enter with impressive ease, but never leaves. The floor is packed earth, which in summer turns to dust, and in winter turns to mud. It's practically a spa environment if you completely ignore the concept of spa. You sit up in bed and immediately feel something wet and sticky on your foot. Don't investigate too deeply. It could be mud. It could be something one of the animals left during the night. It could simply be the eternal humidity that permeates everything in this place. Basic medieval survival rule number 1. If you don't know what it is, don't smell it, don't touch it, and definitely don't taste it. The smell of the house is... How can I describe it poetically? Imagine the aroma of a mixture of old sweat, spoiled cheese, wet wood smoke, various animal and human excrement, and a subtle hint of existential despair. It's a perfume that sticks to your skin and never comes off. You'll get used to it. You have no choice. Outside, the medieval world is awakening. You hear the sound of other peasants starting their day, the noise of buckets clanging, water being carried, pigs grunting, chickens clucking hysterically, and occasionally someone scream upon discovering that one of their animals died during the night. It's a comforting soundtrack, if you have a very specific definition of comforting. Your stomach growls with a hunger that has been your companion for years. It's not the hunger of, I skipped breakfast. It's the hunger of, I haven't eaten properly in weeks. It's a constant sensation like background pain that never completely disappears. You learn to live with it, like you learn to live with toothache or with the certainty that life is fundamentally unfair. Through the crack that serves as a window, you can see the first glimmer of daylight. It's a gray dawn, because all dawns are gray in December of 1347. The sun, if it still exists, seems to have completely given up shining on this part of the world. The light is weak, filtered by heavy clouds that promise more freezing rain. You know you need to get up. The workday started at least an hour ago, and every minute you spend in bed is one less minute to ensure your family doesn't starve today. There are no weekends. There are no holidays, except those when you're forced to go to church and pretend you're grateful for this wonderful life God has given you. Your clothes are on the floor, where you left them last night. They are the same clothes you've been wearing for weeks, because you only have one change. It's a brown wool tunic. Everything in the Middle Ages is brown, that used to belong to your older brother, who died from an infection that would be cured with antibiotics today. The tunic is too big for you, but that's good, because it hides the fact that you're dangerously thin. You get up slowly, every muscle in your body protesting. Sleeping in a straw bed is like doing contortion exercises all night long. Your back aches, your neck is stiff, and you have the impression that one of the rats used your ear as a bathroom during the night. The cold hits you immediately. It's a damp, penetrating cold that enters through your bones and settles there like an uninvited tenant. You quickly put on the tunic, which offers almost no protection against the cold, but it's better than nothing. Boots? What a luxury it would be to have boots. You have pieces of leather tied to your feet with ropes. It's the medieval version of shoes, and they work about as well as you'd expect. You're officially awake, dressed, and ready to face another day in medieval paradise. Outside, the world awaits you with its promises of hard work, scarce food, and an impressive variety of creative ways to suffer. You're not prepared for this. But then, who would be? Now that you're awake and dressed, it's time for the first meal of the day. Want a nice hot coffee to start the morning right? Forget it. Want a glass of fresh milk? Good luck with that. Welcome to the medieval breakfast, where the only certainty is that you'll continue to be hungry. Your mother, who was already awake 2 hours ago because medieval women apparently don't need sleep, is crouched beside what can generously be called a stove. It's basically a hole in the ground surrounded by stones where some wet twigs bravely struggle to produce fire. The smoke rises directly to the ceiling, and since there's no proper chimney, it simply spreads through the house like toxic fog. Your eyes immediately water. This is normal. Everything waters in the Middle Ages. What's being prepared for your morning meal is a culinary masterpiece that modern chefs would call oatmeal. Porridge. Medieval peasants call it soup, but that's just a matter of marketing. It's basically oats cooked in water. Water that, we hope, was boiled enough to kill most of the bacteria. The oats themselves are of indefinite age. They might have been harvested last year. They might have been found at the bottom of a forgotten sack. The important thing is they haven't yet developed legs and haven't tried to escape. The texture is interesting. Imagine a paste that couldn't decide whether it wanted to be liquid or solid, so it opted to be both at the same time. It's sticky but watery. It's thick but it drips. It's a physical contradiction that defies the laws of nature, served in a wooden bowl that has seen better days. Ah, the bowl. Your personal bowl. Inherited from your grandfather, who inherited it from his grandfather. It's made of wood that was once a tree, but now is more like a complex ecosystem. It has deep cracks where microscopic pieces of food from past meals have taken root and developed their own civilizations. The wood has a color that can only be described as suspicious brown, with dark stains that could be burns, could be mold, or could be something you really don't want to investigate too deeply. Your spoon is a fascinating archaeological artifact made of bone from what animal, nobody knows for sure, and nobody asks. It was hand-carved by your great-grandfather in an era when people apparently had time to carve utensils. The handle is smooth from generations of use, polished by thousands of dubious meals. The part that should hold the food has an approximately circular shape if you use plenty of imagination. You sit down at what can be generously called a table, a wooden plank supported on two stones, and observe your meal. The porridge has a color that artists would call apocalyptic beige. There are small dark lumps floating on the surface. They could be pieces of burnt oats. They could be insects that fell during cooking. They could be small mysteries of medieval life. Medieval survival rule number 2, don't investigate the lumps. Just eat and pray they're not poisonous. The taste is, how can I describe it in a way that won't completely ruin your appetite? Imagine the taste of wet cardboard with a subtle touch of smoke and a generous pinch of despair. There's no salt because salt is expensive. There's no sugar because sugar is the stuff of legend. There are no spices because spices are for people who have money to waste on luxuries like food that tastes like something. While you chew slowly, because chewing quickly might reveal textures that are better not perceived, your family gathers for the communal meal. Everyone shares the same porridge from the same pot, which was cooked with the same water of dubious origin. It's a moment of family unity if you ignore the fact that everyone is basically fighting for survival. Your younger brother, who is about 8 years old but looks 5, because of chronic malnutrition, is fishing something out of his porridge with his fingers. He found a piece of straw. Or maybe it's an insect. He examines it briefly and then eats it anyway. Protein is protein, and wasting food is mortal sin, both literally and figuratively. Your older sister is eating in silence with the distant look of someone who has already accepted that life is basically a long series of bad meals interspersed with hard work. She's pregnant, again, and you can see she's trying not to vomit the porridge. Morning sickness plus medieval food is a combination that would test anyone's resistance. Your parents eat with the efficiency of people who have learned to see food as fuel, not as pleasure. They chew mechanically, without talking, focused on the task of ingesting enough calories to survive until the next meal. Because, spoiler alert, the next meal won't be much better than this one. Along with the porridge, you're entitled to a piece of bread. And when I say bread, I'm using the term in the most technical sense possible. It's a solid object made mainly of rye, which was the cheapest cereal available. The color is dark brown. Everything in the Middle Ages is brown, and the texture is comparable to wood. Literally, you need to soak it in the porridge to be able to chew it without breaking your teeth. The bread has some extra ingredients that weren't in the original recipe. Small black dots that could be seeds, could be dirt, could be rodent excrement. The flour was ground on a stone, so there are always small stone fragments mixed in the dough. It's like eating bread with sand, except the sand can break your teeth. To drink, you have an impressive luxury: weak beer. No, you haven't become an alcoholic at 12 years old. Beer is literally safer than water because the fermentation process kills most of the bacteria that would make common water a quick and painful death sentence. This beer has approximately the same alcohol content as a modern soft drink, but with the taste of stagnant water mixed with sour grains. The beer is served in a cracked ceramic mug that was once white, but now has a color that can be diplomatically described as cemetery earth. The drink itself has a cloudy color and small particles floating. You've learned not to look too closely. It's better to drink quickly and pretend it's water with a strange taste. While you eat, small visitors join the table, flies mainly, who seem to think your meal is an open invitation. They land on the porridge, walk along the edge of the bowl, and occasionally decide to take a dive in your drink. You automatically shoo them away, but they return immediately. It's a choreographed dance that you perform 3 times a day, every day. A particularly brave rat appears in the corner of your peripheral vision. He's watching the table with interest, calculating the chances of getting a piece of bread without being killed. Rats are practically family members at this point. You know them individually, know which ones are more aggressive, which ones are more timid. This is Rodrigo. You've given names to all of them because it's important to have company. Your stomach growls again, even after finishing the porridge. This is normal. Medieval breakfast isn't designed to satisfy your hunger. It's designed to keep you alive long enough to work until lunch. And lunch, spoiler, won't be much different from this. You scrape the bottom of the bowl with the bone. Spoon, trying to capture every last particle of porridge. Wasting food isn't just stupidity, it's potentially fatal. Every calorie counts when you're constantly on the brink of starvation. Your mother watches approvingly. Clean plates are a sign of gratitude and good sense. The meal ends in less than 10 minutes, not because you ate quickly, but because there wasn't much to eat. You get up from the table, from the plank supported on stones, and feel that your stomach is still questioning whether that really counts as food. But it's what there is. It's always what there is. Outside, you can hear other peasants starting their workday. The sound of tools clanging, animals being fed, children crying. It's the soundtrack of medieval survival playing every day without holidays, without breaks. Congratulations, you've had breakfast. Now prepare yourself for 16 hours of hard work under the scorching sun or freezing rain, knowing that your next moment of rest will be when you collapse from exhaustion tonight. This was considered normal, believe it or not. Now that you've survived breakfast, it's time to properly prepare for the day. And by properly prepare, I mean execute a series of rituals that would make a modern spa close its doors permanently. Weekly bath. What an impressive luxury. Try annual bath if you're lucky and don't die of pneumonia in the process. You head to the personal hygiene area of your house, which is basically a dark corner where someone left a cracked bowl full of cold water. The water has a color that can only be described as translucent brown and small particles floating that you prefer not to identify. This is the same water your entire family uses to wash, one person after another, without changing it. Your father used it first, obviously, because family hierarchy is important even in dirt. You wet a rag, and when I say rag, I mean a piece of fabric that was once a shirt, then a cleaning cloth, and now is officially a hard hygiene utensil. It has the texture of rough sandpaper and the smell of permanent mold. You dip it in the dubious water and begin the morning ritual of cleaning. First, the face. You pass the damp rag over your face, removing the most superficial layers of dirt accumulated during the night. The cold water makes your eyes water, but that's good. Tears help wash the eyes. It's medieval multitasking. The dirt comes off, but is immediately replaced by new dirt from the rag. It's a perfectly balanced system of impurity redistribution. Your hands receive special attention because they're your work tools. You scrub them with the wet rag, trying to remove at least the most recent layer of mud, sweat, and unidentified substances. Your nails are geological works of art, small landscapes of accumulated dirt that tell the story of the last few months. There are no nail clippers, so they grow until they break naturally, creating irregular and sharp edges that become efficient collectors of more dirt. Now, the teeth. Ah, medieval teeth, those little yellow jewels that do the work of chewing hard bread and dubious meat. Your toothbrush is a twig chewed until it forms fibers. Cutting-edge technology for the era. You wet it in the brown water and begin scrubbing your teeth with movements that are more hope than technique. The toothpaste is a homemade mixture of wood ash and coarse salt. The ashes come from the fireplace, where branches, leaves, and occasionally pieces of old furniture were burned. Salt is an impressive luxury. Your family managed to trade a sack of oats for a handful of crystals. The mixture has the consistency of wet sand and the taste of, well, ash and salt. It's not exactly refreshing, but it removes some of the more rebellious layers of tartar. You scrub vigorously, and your gums begin to bleed. This is normal. Everything bleeds in the Middle Ages. The blood mixes with the ashes, creating a pink paste that you spit on the packed earth floor. The floor gratefully absorbs yet another organic gift. After a few minutes of this dental torture, you examine the result. Your teeth now have a color that can be diplomatically described as grayish yellow. Some are loose. Scurvy is a common condition when your diet consists mainly of porridge and hope. But at least there are no visible pieces of food stuck. That's progress. Your hair is the next challenge. It hasn't been washed in, well, you stop counting, after 2 months. Washing hair is a complicated process that involves heating water using homemade soap made from ash and animal fat, and then complete drying to avoid pneumonia. It's a project that requires planning and resources you rarely have available. Instead, you use the basic maintenance method. Your fingers function as a primitive comb, separating the most tangled strands and removing the most obvious pieces of straw, leaves, and small insects that decided to build nests in your scalp. Your lice protest vigorously against this disturbance of peace. They've established a thriving community there and don't appreciate external interference. To condition your hair, you use a bit of rancid animal fat left over from the last time your family was lucky enough to eat meat. The fat is applied with fingers, creating an oily texture that theoretically should make the hair more manageable. In practice, it just adds another layer of questionable substance to your already overloaded scalp. Your clothes are the next item on the hygiene list. And when I say wash clothes, I'm being very optimistic. You have one tunic, one piece of undergarment that was once white, and a pair of pants that are more holes than fabric. These clothes are washed approximately once a month if you're lucky with the weather. The washing process is fascinating. You take the clothes to the nearest stream, a 20-minute walk, and beat them against submerged stones. There's no soap, so you use a mixture of ash and fermented urine. Yes, urine. Urine contains ammonia, which theoretically helps remove stains. In practice, it just replaces one bad smell with another bad smell. After beating the clothes against the stones until your arms hurt, you wring them to remove excess water and take them back home. They dry hanging on a rope, where they collect smoke from the fireplace, dust from the air, and occasionally bird excrement. When they finally dry, they have a stiffness that can only be described as textile armor. Now, let's talk about bathrooms, or rather, about the complete absence of bathrooms. Your family has a latrine, a hole in the yard covered by a plank with a hole in the middle. It's an elegant design in its simplicity. The hole is shared with the pigs, who consider the contents a special delicacy. It's a perfect ecological system, if you ignore all the sanitary implications. Toilet paper. What a modern and interesting invention. You're entitled to large leaves, if it's summer and there are leaves, available. In winter, you improvise with straw, pieces of old fabric, or simply use your left hand. The left hand is officially designated for this function, which is why greeting someone with your left hand is considered extremely offensive. After using the latrine, you clean your left hand with dirt, leaves, or whatever is available. There's no running water, no antimicrobial soap, no wet wipes. There's just you, your hand, and the hope that the next meal won't be contaminated by this experience. Your body odor at this point is, how can I describe this poetically? Imagine a perfume that combines accumulated sweat, rancid animal fat, wood smoke, clothes never properly washed, and a subtle hint of latrine. It's an aroma that becomes your personal signature, your olfactory trademark. Other peasants recognize you by smell before they even see you. But here's the secret. Everyone smells like this. It's the official perfume of the Middle Ages. When everyone smells bad, nobody smells bad. It's olfactory democracy in its purest form. You look at yourself in a reflective surface, a piece of polished metal, or the water surface in the bucket, and see the final result of your hygiene efforts. You're clean enough to survive another day. Your teeth are in your mouth. Your hair is relatively in place. Your clothes cover the necessary parts, and you don't smell worse than yesterday. Congratulations. You've completed your morning hygiene routine. It took approximately 15 minutes and consumed about half a liter of dubious water. Now you're ready to face a full day of strenuous physical work under the scorching sun. You're not prepared for your own smell. But then, who would be? Now that you're properly clean and fed with your nutritious meal of dubious porridge, it's time to begin the most exciting part of your day, working until you literally drop. And when I say work, I'm not talking about 8 hours with a lunch break and coffee. I'm talking about 14 to 16 hours of strenuous physical labor from sunrise to sunset, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Vacation? What a modern and fascinating concept. You pick up your work tools, and I use the term tools with all possible generosity. Your hoe is a masterpiece of medieval engineering, a crude wooden handle connected to an iron blade that has seen better days. The iron was forged by the village blacksmith, a man who learned his trade by watching another man beat hot metal. The blade is dull, crooked, and has more holes than Swiss cheese. The wooden handle has splinters that burrow into your hands with every movement. Your scythe is even more impressive. The curved blade should be sharp enough to cut grain, but it's so dull you could use it as a spoon. The handle is cracked in 3 places and has been repaired with ropes that have already rotted and been replaced by other ropes that are also rotting. It's a tool that passes from father to son, not by family tradition, but because nobody has money to buy a new one. You head to the field, your 15-minute morning walk through mud, puddles, and various animal excrement. The field you cultivate isn't yours, obviously. It belongs to the feudal lord, a man who has never held a hoe in his life, but who has very strong opinions about how you should use yours. You're entitled to cultivate a small plot in exchange for giving half of everything you produce to him. It's an extremely fair deal if you completely ignore the concept of fairness. The sun is still rising when you arrive at the field, but you can already feel the heat promising to be merciless. Or maybe it's winter, and you can feel the cold promising to freeze your bones. It doesn't matter the season. Medieval weather is always extreme and always against you. If it's summer, it's too hot to work. If it's winter, it's too cold to work. But you work anyway, because the alternative is starving to death. Today is plowing day. This means preparing the soil for planting, breaking the hard clods with your dull hoe. Ideally, you'd have an ox or horse to help with this work. In reality, you have your own back and the hope that it won't break before the end of the day. You lean over the hoe and begin beating the hard earth. Each blow reverberates through your arms, shoulders, and back. The earth is dry as stone. It last rained 3 weeks ago, and every piece you manage to break is a small victory against the forces of nature. Your hands, even calloused by years of work, begin to bleed where the handle's splinters burrow into the skin. After 2 hours of work, you've managed to plow approximately 2 square meters. You have roughly 2 hectares to cover. The math is discouraging, but you continue. Stopping isn't an option, because the feudal lord makes regular inspections to ensure his serfs are working adequately. And by regular inspections, I mean he shows up mounted on his well-fed horse, looks at you sweaty and dirty, and makes comments about how you could work faster. The sun rises, and with it the temperature. You're sweating profusely, but you can't stop to rest. Every minute lost is food that won't be harvested food your family won't have in winter. The pressure is constant and relentless. You work until your legs tremble, until your vision blurs, until you feel like you're going to faint. Then you work a little more. Your older sister appears in the field at noon, carrying a bucket of warm water and a small portion of hard bread. This is your lunch break, 15 minutes to consume water that tastes like mud and bread that could be used as a weapon. You eat standing up because sitting would mean having to get up again, and your muscles might not cooperate. While you chew the bread that exercises your jaw more than any modern gym, you observe the other workers in the field. Your neighbor is plowing with the help of an ox that seems more dead than alive. The animal is so thin you can count its ribs through its skin. It moves slowly, as if each step were a complex negotiation with gravity. The ox probably won't survive the winter, but for now it can still pull a plow. Another neighbor is working with just his hands because his tools broke last week and he doesn't have resources to fix them. He's literally digging the earth with his fingers, removing stones and roots one by one. His fingers are bleeding, his nails are broken, but he continues. It's a sight that would test the sanity of any modern person, but here it's just another day at the medieval office. Women have their own special version of torture. Your mother is working in the field alongside the men, but when she returns home, she'll still have to cook, clean, take care of the animals, and care for the children. Your pregnant sister is weeding, bending repeatedly despite her growing belly. There's no maternity leave in the Middle Ages. There's only work until the day of birth, birth in the field, if necessary, and return to work the next day. During the afternoon, the first accident of the day happens. Your neighbor John was cutting grass with a dull scythe when the blade broke and flew toward his leg. Now he's sitting under a tree, looking at a deep cut that's bleeding constantly. It will probably get infected. He'll probably die of gangrene. But for now, he ties a dirty rag around the wound and continues working, because stopping would mean not having food today. Work accidents are as common as flies, fingers crushed by stones, backs broken from carrying too much weight, eyes injured by branches, feet pierced by dull tools. There's no health insurance, no workers' compensation, no disability retirement. There's only work until you can't work anymore, and then quick death from starvation. The feudal lord makes his afternoon appearance mounted on his well-cared-for horse, wearing clothes that cost more than everything you own together. He observes your progress with critical eyes and makes useful comments like, "You could work faster," and, "In my day, workers had more dedication." He's never held a work tool in his life, but he's sure he knows exactly how you should do your job. You smile and agree with everything he says, because disagreeing could result in physical punishment or a reduction of your already miserable food portion. It's a theatrical performance you execute several times a week, pretending gratitude for a life of slave labor while secretly planning your oppressor's slow and painful death. The hours pass with the speed of a wounded snail. Your back aches, your hands bleed, your feet are on fire inside your poorly made leather shoes. The sun continues its relentless journey across the sky, and you continue your relentless journey through the field. Plowing, planting, weeding, harvesting, the eternal cycle of subsistence agriculture. When the sun finally sets, you look back and see the day's progress. Maybe 1/10 of the field has been adequately worked. Tomorrow you'll return and do the same thing, and the next day, and the next, until your back breaks definitively, or until a defective tool causes a fatal accident, or until an infection from a small cut spreads through your body. You walk home with stumbling steps, carrying your broken tools and your destroyed muscles. Your clothes are soaked with sweat, your hands are covered with dried blood, and you have dirt stuck in every pore of your skin. You look like a medieval zombie and feel even worse. At home, you collapse on your straw bed without even changing clothes. Tomorrow you'll wake up at 4 in the morning and do it all again. and the next day, and the next, until death separates you from work. Spoiler, there's no retirement. You work until you die, and when you die, your children will take your place in the field and continue the eternal cycle of work until death. But hey, at least tomorrow you might have the excitement of getting hurt in completely new ways. Medieval life is full of surprises, most of them painful. Speaking of getting hurt in new ways, let's discuss what happens when you actually need medical care in the Middle Ages. Spoiler alert, you'll wish you had stayed with the original injury. Medieval medicine works based on a simple principle. If you don't die from the disease, you'll certainly die from the treatment. Let's imagine you woke up with a terrible headache. Maybe it's tension. From hard work, maybe it's dehydration. Maybe it's the result of sleeping in a straw bed infested with parasites. Any sensible person would take an aspirin and drink water. But you don't have aspirin, don't have clean water, and have access to what medieval medicine considers the obvious solution. Drill a hole in your skull to release the demons that are obviously causing the pain. That's right. Trepanation. Medieval medicine's favorite practice for any head-related problem. Headache? Drill hole. Migraine? Drill a bigger hole. Strange behavior? Clearly you need several holes. It's an elegant solution in its simplicity. If the problem is in the head, make a hole so it can get out. The doctor responsible for this procedure is the local barber, because who better to perform brain surgery than the man who cuts hair while drunk? He learned medicine by watching other barbers, who learned by watching other barbers, in a beautiful chain of ignorance extending through generations. His medical education consisted of saw someone do it once, and it seemed simple enough. His medical tools are impressive in their versatility. The same knife he uses for shaving also serves for amputations, dental extractions, and minor surgeries. The same bowl where he mixes shaving foam is also used to collect blood during bloodletting. It's medieval multitasking at its best. Sterilization between uses. What a modern and unnecessary concept. For your trepanation, he uses a manual drill, basically a large corkscrew, which he rotates slowly through your scalp, skull, and eventually brain. There's no anesthesia available, except perhaps some suspicious herbs mixed in alcohol, strong enough to kill bacteria or patients. You remain conscious throughout the entire procedure, hearing the comforting sound of the drill boring through your skull as if it were wood. If you survive the trepanation, big odds against you. The hole in your head will be covered with a piece of animal leather. There are no sterile bandages, no antibiotic ointments, no medical follow-up. There's just you, a hole in your head, and the hope that infection arrives before the demons return. But let's say you have a less dramatic problem, a simple stomach ache, perhaps caused by the questionable oat porridge you ate yesterday. Medieval medicine has the perfect solution. Leeches, many leeches. The theory is that you have too much blood in your body, and removing a few liters will certainly solve any internal problem. The doctor barber keeps his leeches in a cracked ceramic pot full of stagnant water. The creatures are fat and lazy, fed on blood from previous patients. They're strategically applied to your stomach, where they attach with impressive enthusiasm. You can feel them sucking your life force through your skin, leaving circular marks that look like miniature vampire bites. While the leeches do their work, the doctor prepares his special medicinal potion. The recipe is a family. Secret passed through generations. Fermented goat urine, dried bat excrement, roots from unidentified plants, and a generous pinch of hope. The mixture has a color that can only be described as apocalyptic brown, and a smell that would make a vulture vomit. You're forced to drink this potion while the leeches continue their feast on your stomach. The taste is indescribable. Imagine licking a stable floor after mixing it with sour vinegar and rotten plants. Your throat rebels immediately, but you're encouraged to keep the potion in your stomach. Vomiting would waste valuable medicine. If your problem is more serious, say a broken leg, medieval medicine has even more creative solutions. First, the doctor will examine the fracture using his dirty hands, moving the broken bones until you scream in pain. This confirms there's really something wrong. Medieval medical diagnosis at its best. Treatment consists of tying pieces of wood around the broken leg using ropes that have already been used to tie animals. There are no x-rays to check if the bones are properly aligned, so the doctor simply twists your leg until it looks right. If you faint from pain during this procedure, that's considered a bonus. Unconscious patients are easier to handle. For really serious cases, like gangrene or serious infections, medieval medicine offers the definitive solution: amputation. And when I say amputation, I mean the barber doctor will saw off your limb with the same saw he uses to cut wood. The operating table is the same table where your family eats, just with some dirty rags spread on top. Anesthesia for this major procedure consists of a hard blow to the head to knock you unconscious, or several mugs of strong alcohol until you can no longer feel your legs. Both methods have questionable success rates. Many patients wake up in the middle of surgery, discovering that half their leg has already been removed. The cauterization tool to seal the cut blood vessels is in such iron heated in the hearth fire, the same fire where the family cooks and where animals warm themselves. The iron isn't cleaned between uses, carrying with it an impressive variety of bacteria from previous procedures. The smell of burnt flesh mixes with the other aromas of the house, creating an atmosphere that would define the medieval medical experience. If you survive the amputation, odds aren't in your favor. Recovery happens in the same straw bed where you normally sleep. The wound is covered with dirty rags that are changed when they start smelling worse than normal. Infection is practically guaranteed, but that's considered a natural part of the healing process. Common diseases of the era are treated with equally impressive methods. Dysentery? More leeches, obviously, because if you have intestinal problems, you clearly need to lose more blood. Pneumonia? A mixture of heated urine and animal excrement applied to the chest, followed by vigorous bloodletting. Tuberculosis? Breathing smoke from burning herbs while leeches work on the lungs. Child mortality is a fascinating statistical number. Approximately half of all children don't survive the first 5 years of life, not for lack of medical care, but precisely because of it. Babies with colic receive opium drops that kill them by overdose. Children with fever are put in ice baths that cause fatal thermal shock. Dental problems in children are solved by pulling all teeth with dirty pliers. Average life expectancy is approximately 30 years if you have extraordinary luck and manage to avoid doctors during most of your life. Most people die not from the original disease, but from the medical treatments applied. It's a perfectly efficient system of natural selection. Only the strongest survive medical care. Births are especially exciting events. Women give birth assisted by midwives whose medical education consisted of, "I've seen this before." There's no knowledge about germs, so the midwife's dirty hands are considered perfectly adequate for the procedure. Complications during birth are solved with brute force. Pulling the baby harder always solves everything. If you develop any mental condition, depression, anxiety, or simply questioning why life is so terrible, medieval medicine has a simple explanation. You're possessed by demons. Treatment involves exorcism performed by drunk priests, followed by more trepanation to ensure the demons have an adequate exit. Medicines are prepared under conditions that would make a modern laboratory close permanently. Herbs are collected in places where animals relieve themselves, then dried in environments full of smoke and mold. Potions are mixed in containers that have never been properly washed and contain residues from previous preparations. The end result is that seeking medical treatment in the Middle Ages is essentially a death sentence with extra steps. You can enter the medical office with a simple headache and leave with a hole in your skull a severe infection, and a few organs less. This was considered normal, believe it or not. Medieval doctors had impressive confidence in their abilities, even when their success rates were statistically worse than doing nothing. So, next time you complain about waiting 2 hours in the emergency room, remember, at least your doctor washed his hands and doesn't plan to make unnecessary holes in your skull. Now that we've established that seeking medical help is essentially assisted suicide, let's talk about the rest of medieval society and how it's specifically designed to make your life as miserable as possible. Welcome to the feudal system, where you're officially on the bottom rung of the social ladder, and everyone above you spends their time inventing new ways to make your existence even more unbearable. Good morning? You've been accused of witchcraft again. The feudal hierarchy is a masterpiece of social organization that works based on a simple principle: sum. People were born to command, and you were born to obey until you die. At the top of the pyramid is the king, who was theoretically chosen by God to rule. Below him are the nobles, who were chosen for having been born to people who knew people who impressed the king. And at the absolute bottom of the pyramid is you, who was chosen by, well, just bad luck. Your feudal lord is technically your owner. No, that's not a metaphor. You literally belong to him, along with the land, animals, tools, and anything you might produce during your useful life. He has legal rights over where you live, whom you marry, how many children you can have, and how you should die. It's like having an extremely controlling boss, except you can never quit, and he has legal authority to kill you if he wakes up in a bad mood. This feudal lord, let's call him Lord Stupidity, has never worked a day in his life. He inherited his position from his father, who inherited it from his grandfather, in a long lineage of people who never held a tool that wasn't an ornamental sword. His education consisted of learning to ride expensive horses and shout orders at people who do the real work. But he's absolutely certain he knows exactly how you should live your life. Medieval taxes are a creative art form. You pay tax on everything that exists and some things that don't exist. There's tax on the land you cultivate, tax on the house where you live, tax on the animals you raise, tax on the food you produce, and tax on the right to continue breathing. Okay, that last one hasn't been officially implemented yet, but they're working on it. The standard tax rate is half of everything you produce, but that's just the beginning. There are special taxes for special occasions. War tax when the feudal lord decides to invade the neighbor's property, marriage tax when his daughter decides to get married, construction tax when he wants to renovate the castle, and because I can tax for all other situations. You work 6 months of the year just to pay taxes. The other 6 months you work to have enough food not to starve to death. It's a perfectly balanced system if you ignore the fact that one party lives in a castle eating banquets, while the other lives in a hut eating dubious porridge. Medieval laws were written by people who clearly hated the idea of other people having fun. It's forbidden to hunt. All game belongs to the feudal lord, even rats. It's forbidden to fish. All fish belong to the feudal lord, even those that die alone. It's forbidden to gather wild fruits, cut wood for warmth, or leave the property without written permission, in 3 copies. You can't sell anything you produce without paying a license fee. You can't buy anything without paying purchase tax. You can't travel without an official pass. You can't move to another place because you belong to the land. It's basically a concentration camp with taxes and a more organized administrative structure. Punishments for breaking these laws are impressively creative. Stealing an egg results in public flogging, 15 lashes at the village pillory while your neighbors watch and comment. Hunting a rabbit without permission results in branding on the forehead, so everyone knows you're a dangerous criminal who threatens social order by stealing food to avoid starving to death. More serious crimes, like questioning why the system works this way, result in punishments that test the limits of human creativity. There's the rack, where your limbs are stretched until they separate from your body. There's the wheel, where your bones are systematically broken with a hammer. There's the stake, for cases where the judicial system wants to make sure you won't repeat the crime. The Catholic Church functions as the thought control department of medieval society. They have very strong opinions about what you should think, how you should think, and when you should think. Thinking for yourself is discouraged, and thinking unauthorized thoughts is technically heresy, which is punishable by slow and creative death. Every week you're forced to go to Mass, where a priest who can't read Latin recites words in Latin that he memorized phonetically. You stand for 2 hours in a cold, damp church, hearing about how your terrible life is part of the divine plan and how you should be grateful for suffering so much. It's reverse therapy. Instead of feeling better, you leave feeling worse about your existence. The church also has a monopoly on explanations for natural phenomena. Disease, sin, bad harvest, sin, accidents, sin, bad weather, definitely sin. The solution to all these problems is more prayer, more tithing, and more guilt about things you can't control. Medieval superstitions turn every aspect of daily life into a potential source of terror. If your cat looks strangely at someone, you could be accused of witchcraft. If your food spoils faster than normal, clearly you made a pact with demons. If you know how to read, suspicious skill for a peasant. Obviously you're studying diabolical grimoires. Your neighbors are your worst enemies, disguised as community. They watch everything you do, looking for suspicious behavior to report to authorities. Maria from next door noted that you woke up 15 minutes later on Tuesday. Clearly demonic behavior. John from across the street noticed that your chickens laid too many eggs this week. Obvious witchcraft. The informant system is officially encouraged. There are rewards for reporting neighbors suspected of crimes, heresy, or simply being annoying. It's like living in a medieval version of a reality show where everyone is both participant and judge, and the prize for winning is watching your neighbors being publicly tortured. Anything out of the ordinary is automatically suspect. If you're smarter than average, you're clearly doing black magic. If you're healthier than others, you obviously sold your soul. If you're too lucky, you're definitely receiving supernatural help. The goal is to be perfectly mediocre in all aspects of life. Mediocre enough not to attract attention, but not so mediocre that it seems like you're not trying. Witchcraft accusations are the community's favorite entertainment. It's like a game where everyone can participate. Someone shouts, "Witch!" An impromptu committee forms to investigate. Evidence is creatively invented, and a bonfire is built for the grand finale. It's participatory, educational, and solves overpopulation problems at the same time. Tests to determine if someone is a witch are scientifically rigorous. If you sink when thrown in water, you were innocent. Congratulations, you're dead, but clean of sin. If you float, you're clearly a witch and will be burned alive. If you confess under torture, you're guilty. If you don't confess under torture, your resistance to pain proves you have supernatural powers, so you're guilty. It's a foolproof system. Social paranoia is so intense that you develop a second set of personalities, who you really are and who you need to pretend to be to survive. You smile when you want to cry, agree when you want to disagree, and express gratitude for a life you secretly hate. It's full-time method acting, where breaking character can result in painful death. You live in a society where expressing a different opinion is a capital crime, where being too lucky is suspect, where being intelligent is dangerous, and where your neighbors are encouraged to inform on you for rewards. It's like living in a simulation designed by someone who really doesn't like you. And the most impressive part? All this is considered the natural order of things. The feudal system is presented as divine will. Inequalities are explained as cosmic justice, and your misery is celebrated as spiritual virtue. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where society is organized specifically to ensure you never have a truly good day. But don't worry. Winter is coming, and it's going to make all this seem like a picnic in the park. And then November arrives. The leaves have already fallen weeks ago. The air has that metallic smell that promises snow. And you know you're about to begin the most exciting part of the medieval year. 6 consecutive months of deadly cold without central heating, complete social isolation, and the constant possibility of freezing to death while you sleep. Congratulations for making it to winter. Now, try to survive it. The first sign that medieval winter is different from what you know comes with the first frost. You wake up and find a layer of ice covering the inside of your house. Not just the windows, the inside. The moisture from your breathing during the night froze on the walls, creating natural decoration that transforms your hut into an ice cave. Your feet touch the floor and immediately go numb. The cold rises through your legs like ice water, settling in your bones, where it will remain for the next 6 months. Your straw bed, which was already uncomfortable during summer, has now become an Arctic survival experience. The straw is damp and partially frozen, creating a surface that is simultaneously wet and hard as stone. Your wool blanket, that brown masterpiece with suspicious stains, is stiff as cardboard and offers approximately the same thermal protection as a sheet of paper. You sleep completely dressed, including your poorly made leather shoes, because taking them off would mean waking up with toes black from frostbite. Your clothes, which were already uncomfortable during the day, transform into a sticky second skin during the night. Yesterday's sweat freezes against your body, creating an icy crust that sticks to the fabric. It's like wearing ice armor that never comes off. The fireplace, your house's technological center, fights bravely against the cold, but it's a lost battle from the beginning. The firewood you managed to collect during autumn is wet, green, and reluctant to burn. When it finally catches fire, it produces more smoke than heat, filling the house with dense clouds that make your eyes water and your lungs burn. You have a fascinating choice: die of cold or die of suffocation. Most people choose a bit of both. Fuel is a constant problem. Dry wood is a luxury you can't afford. All good wood was confiscated by the feudal lord for his heated castle. You burn wet branches, damp leaves, pieces of broken furniture, and occasionally dried. Animal excrement. Yes, excrement. When you're desperate for heat, you'll discover that dried cow dung burns surprisingly well and produces lasting heat. The smell is exactly what you'd expect. Food in winter is a culinary adventure that would test anyone's courage. All the food you managed to preserve during autumn is now in various stages of decomposition. The bread has grown a thick beard of green and blue mold. The salted meat has developed a suspicious white crust. The pickled vegetables have fermented into something that can be charitably called acid soup. But you can't afford to be picky. Spoiled food is better than no food, so you develop impressive culinary techniques to mask the taste of putrefaction. Cutting away the most obviously rotten parts, boiling everything until it's unrecognizable, and adding any available seasoning, even if it's just coarse salt and hope. Your stomach learns to accept foods that would make a vulture think twice. Meat with worms? Just remove the most obvious worms and keep chewing. Moldy green bread? The mold adds flavor. Vegetables that have turned to slime? It's basically pre-prepared soup. You develop an immune system that would be envied by modern scavengers. Water freezes regularly, so you melt ice and snow to drink. The snow seems clean and pure, but in reality, it's full of soot from smoke from all the village houses, excrement from animals living outdoors, and various microorganisms that love semi-frozen water. Each sip is a bacteriological adventure. Your family's animals, the chickens, pigs, and occasionally a goat, officially move inside the house during winter, not out of generosity, but out of mutual necessity for survival. The animals produce body heat, and you desperately need every available heat source. They also produce other byproducts that make the house air even more interesting. Your chickens build nests in the warmest corners of the house, usually near the fireplace, where they compete with you for space. They scratch around the packed earth floor, looking for food crumbs and occasionally pecking your toes if you don't move fast enough. Their excrement mixes with the earth floor, creating an aromatic paste you step on every morning. The family pig is a particularly charming roommate. He snores louder than your father, eats anything you drop on the floor, and has very strong opinions about where he should sleep, usually in the warmest spot in the house, which coincidentally is where you'd also like to sleep. It's a constant diplomatic negotiation between you and an animal that weighs more than you and has fewer social concerns. Winter diseases are an impressive medical catalog. Pneumonia is almost guaranteed. Living in damp, cold environments full of smoke isn't exactly what modern doctors would recommend for respiratory health. You develop a deep, productive cough that lasts for months, expelling substances you prefer not to examine too closely. Tuberculosis spreads through the community like a shared hobby. Everyone coughs, everyone occasionally spits blood, and everyone loses weight dramatically. It's a communal experience of slowly wasting away while pretending everything's fine. People die quietly during the night, and the next morning you simply have an empty bed and more space around the fireplace. Scurvy adds color to the experience, literally. Your gums turn purple and swollen, your teeth loosen and fall out, and colorful spots appear on your skin. There are no fresh fruits available during winter, so you develop a vitamin C deficiency that transforms your body into a medical work of art. It's like having a rainbow of health problems. Social isolation is perhaps the most brutal aspect of medieval winter. Roads become impassable due to frozen mud and deep snow. You don't see neighbors for weeks at a time. There's no news from the outside world, no trade, no social visits. It's just you, your family, and the animals, trapped together in a small house for consecutive months. The constant darkness doesn't help the general mood. The sun sets at 4 in the afternoon and doesn't rise until almost 8 in the morning. Most of your life happens in darkness, illuminated only by candles you can't afford to burn for long. You go to sleep early, not by choice, but because there's nothing else to do in the dark. Family tension reaches epic levels when people already living in cramped space are forced to spend even more time together without escape. Arguments about who gets to stay closer to the fireplace become serious diplomatic conflicts. Fights over scarce food can result in physical violence. Your younger brother develops irritating habits that make you fantasize about leaving him outside in the snow. In extreme cases, and these really happened, families resorted to cannibalism to survive. When the last reserve of spoiled food runs out, and the next harvest is still months away, people make choices they'd prefer not to make. It usually started with relatives who died naturally from cold or disease, but sometimes families made more active decisions about who had the best chances of surviving winter. It's a topic that medieval historians address delicately, but the records exist. Entire communities disappearing during particularly harsh winters, with only a few people surviving until spring. Skeletons found with cut marks suggesting processing for food. It's the darkest side of medieval survival, rarely discussed in romantic history books about knights and castles. You spend days looking through the crack that serves as a window, watching snow accumulate higher and higher. Each storm brings more isolation, more cold, and less hope that spring will arrive in time. The wind howls through cracks in the walls like a living creature, and you begin to understand why medieval people believed in ghosts and demons. Winter sounds exactly like something supernatural trying to enter your house. March finally arrives, bringing with it the first signs that you might have survived another winter. The snow begins to melt, creating epic mud that makes life miserable in completely new ways. but at least it's warmer misery. Animals begin to venture outside again, and you can finally open the door without all the house's heat escaping immediately. You made it. You survived 6 months of constant cold, rotten food, respiratory diseases, and forced proximity to farm animals. Congratulations. Now you can look forward and anticipate. Well, spring means it's time to plant again, which means more hard work under the scorching sun. But at least now you can feel your toes again. That's progress in medieval terms. Now that you've survived winter and can finally leave the house without immediately risking your life, it's time to explore the entertainment options available in the Middle Ages. And when I say entertainment, I mean a fascinating collection of activities designed to constantly remind you that life is suffering and death is imminent. Welcome to the world of medieval fun, where watching someone die slowly is considered the pinnacle of Sunday entertainment. The most popular social event of the week is public execution on Sundays after Mass. It's like a community festival, except the main entertainment is watching someone be tortured to death for crimes that might include stealing bread or looking strangely at the feudal lord's wife. The entire village gathers in the central square, bringing children so they can learn valuable lessons about civil obedience. Executions are carefully choreographed events that combine theater, civic education, and psychological terror into a pleasant family experience. The condemned is taken in a cart through the village while people shout creative insults and throw rotten fruit, when they have fruit to waste, which isn't often. It's active audience participation before the main event even begins. Execution methods are impressively varied, depending on the crime and the executor's mood. Hanging is the standard method for common crimes, quick, efficient, and relatively economical. But for more interesting crimes, there are more elaborate options. Burning at the stake for witchcraft, which can last hours if the executor is particularly creative with firewood placement. Beheading for crimes against nobility, which is quick but offers the visual spectacle of spurting blood. Children watch all this as if it were a special educational program. They ask intelligent questions like, why does his head keep moving after it's cut off? And how long does it take for someone to die burning? It's hands-on education about justice, morals, and human anatomy, all in one convenient experience. When there are no scheduled executions, sad days for the community, there are other equally uplifting entertainment options. Cockfights are extremely popular, where two birds are forced to kill each other while grown men scream and bet their rear last coins on the outcome. It's like medieval UFC, except the fighters have feathers and didn't choose to participate voluntarily. Pig races offer fun for the whole family. Hungry pigs are released in a fenced area with food scattered at strategic points, and people bet on which pig will reach each meal first. It's exciting in the way that only watching animals eat desperately can be. Occasionally, a pig decides it prefers to eat another pig instead of the provided food, adding an extra dimension of entertainment. Religious festivals are special celebrations where the entire community gathers to suffer collectively in God's name. Mandatory fasting is a popular tradition. You spend days without eating, while the priest explains how this purifies your soul and brings you closer to divinity. It's especially fun when you were already starving before the festival began. Public penance is another festive element. People confess their sins before the entire community and receive creative punishments like carrying heavy stones, kneeling on corn for hours, or reciting prayers while whipping themselves. It's medieval group therapy, where the goal is to feel worse about yourself than when you started. Medieval music is a unique auditory experience that combines hypnotic monotony with deeply depressive lyrics. Gregorian chants are basically mantras about sin, death, and the futility of earthly existence, performed in tones that would make a funeral seem like a party. It's music designed to induce meditative states of existential despair. Traveling minstrels occasionally visit the village, bringing popular ballads about knights who die horribly, maidens who die tragically, and peasants who die, well, in various interesting ways. It's like medieval country music, where all songs end with someone dead, broke, or both. The melodies are catchy if you like melodies that sound like funeral laments. Board games exist, but are limited and usually involve gambling you. Can't afford to lose. Dice made from animal bones are particularly popular. There's something poetic about betting your money using the mortal remains of a creature that probably had a life as miserable as yours. The rules are simple. Roll the dice, lose your money, go home even poorer than before. Literature isn't exactly an entertainment option for you, considering you can't read and don't have access to books. But occasionally, someone who can read visits the village and tells stories, which invariably are about saints who were martyred in creative ways, sinners who were horribly punished, or ordinary people who made bad choices and suffered epic consequences. It's like medieval Netflix, except all programs are about suffering and redemption through pain. Medieval theater consists mainly of religious mysteries, plays about biblical episodes performed by amateur actors who memorize their lines phonetically without understanding the meaning. Performances are long, morally instructive, and frequently involve graphic representations of crucifixion, martyrdom, and eternal damnation. It's educational entertainment that guarantees you leave feeling adequately terrified about your soul's fate. Weddings are major social events that combine party with commercial negotiation. You don't know your future spouse until the wedding day. It's an exciting surprise to discover whether you'll be married to someone relatively healthy or someone already dying of tuberculosis. The ceremony is followed by a feast where the entire village eats the best available food, which is still terrible, and drinks until they temporarily forget their lives are miserable. Drinking is, frankly, the most effective form of medieval entertainment available. Strong alcohol made from anything fermentable, grains, fruits, vegetables, and occasionally substances you prefer not to identify, offers temporary escape from the brutal reality of medieval existence. It's self-medication in an era where official medicine is worse than the disease. Taverns are social centers where men gather to drink, tell lies about their lives, and occasionally engage in fights that result in serious injuries. It's like group therapy, except it involves more alcohol and more physical violence. Women generally aren't welcome unless they're serving drinks or available for other services. Strength games are popular among men who want to prove their masculinity through competitions that frequently end in permanent injuries. Stone lifting, mud wrestling, and competitions of who can drink the most without dying are regular entertainments. It's like medieval CrossFit, except there are no qualified trainers and serious accidents are considered part of the fun. Occasional fairs bring special entertainment like jugglers, who frequently drop dangerous objects on the crowd, comedians, whose jokes are mainly about death and excretion, and freak shows featuring people with deformities or rare diseases. It's entertainment that makes you feel better about your own miserable life, comparatively speaking. Nightly tournaments happen rarely, but when they do, they offer the spectacle of rich men trying to kill each other with lances while mounted on expensive horses. It's like watching car accidents in slow motion, except it's purposeful and there's betting involved. Peasants are invited to watch and applaud, but not to participate, obviously. Dancing exists, but consists mainly of repetitive movements performed in circles while musicians play the same monotonous melody repeatedly. It's exercise disguised as fun, and considering you already do strenuous physical work 16 hours a day, the last thing you want to do for fun is more exercise. Storytelling around the fireplace is popular domestic entertainment during the long winter months. Stories are invariably about people who had even worse lives than yours. An informal competition of who can tell the most depressing tale. It's like competing to see who can be most depressive, and everyone wins because all stories are genuinely horrible. The end result is that medieval entertainment is designed to constantly remind you of your mortality, the futility of human existence, and the importance of accepting your place in the social order. It's fun with educational purpose, ensuring you never forget that your life is temporary, miserable, and completely controlled by forces beyond your influence. Medieval entertainment. When watching someone die was the pinnacle of Sunday fun, and everything else was just creative variations on the theme of human suffering. But at least it was free, if you ignore the cost in mental sanity and optimism about human nature. Now you understand why medieval people died young. It wasn't just disease and hard work, it was existential boredom of epic proportions. And then comes that special day you always knew would arrive, the day when your life, which was already an impressive collection of miseries, decides to surpass itself and reach new heights of disaster. It's a perfectly ordinary Tuesday in April. You've just finished 14 hours of field work, and you're walking home when you hear the sound that makes any medieval peasant's heart stop. Someone screaming your name, followed by the magic words, "egg thief." Congratulations, you've just been promoted from anonymous miserable to wanted criminal. The accuser is your neighbor Maria, a 40-year-old woman who looks 60 because of medieval life and who possesses the special talent of turning any bad situation into something worse. She's standing in front of your house, gesticulating dramatically to a crowd that formed with the impressive speed with which medieval people gather whenever there's possibility of violent entertainment. In her hands she holds devastating evidence, an eggshell. "This egg was stolen from my henhouse," she declares with the authority of someone who just discovered the cure for plague. "And I saw this thief leaving in the direction of my yard last night," the crowd murmurs appreciatively. Circumstantial evidence is medieval justice's favorite type of evidence. It's flexible, interpretive, and allows lots of creativity and application. You try to explain that you never stole any egg, that you were working in the field until dark, and that you didn't even know Maria had eggs to steal, considering her chickens are thinner than toothpicks. But your words are lost in the crowd's growing enthusiasm, which has already decided your guilt and is only interested in punishment details. It's medieval democracy in action, trial by angry mob thirsty for justice. John, your neighbor from the other side, appears as additional witness. "I also saw suspicious behavior," he announces. "This man was walking near Maria's henhouse last week." The fact that you have to pass near Maria's henhouse to reach your own yard is an inconvenient detail the crowd chooses to ignore. Technical details shouldn't interfere with a good crime story. The situation escalates quickly when Pedro, another neighbor, adds his contribution. "And I noticed he had feathers on his shoe the day before yesterday." That the feathers probably came from your own chickens who live in your house during winter is another factual inconvenience. The crowd is building a solid case based on evidence that would make a modern detective laugh, but which is perfectly adequate for medieval judicial standards. Someone mentions you were seen eating an egg last week. The fact that it was an egg from your own hen, cooked by your own mother, consumed in your own house, witnessed by your own family, is irrelevant. You ate an egg, Maria lost an egg, the criminal mathematics is obvious. Case closed, as medieval investigators would say if they knew English. The crowd decides sufficient evidence has been presented, and it's time to find the official judge. Unfortunately, the official judge is Lord Stupidity, your feudal lord, who at this exact moment is trying to recover from an epic night of drinking. He's dragged from his castle in a condition that can be diplomatically described as functionally compromised, but which in reality means still drunk from yesterday's party. The trial happens immediately in the village square because delayed justice is denied justice, and also because the crowd is in a hurry to see blood before dinner. Lord Stupidity sits in a chair someone brought from home, swaying slightly and trying to focus his eyes on the participants. He hears the accusation with the concentration of someone fighting a monumental hangover. Egg theft is serious crime, he declares, pronouncing only half the words correctly. Eggs are valuable property. Stealing eggs is... He pauses, clearly having forgotten where he was going with this reasoning. It's bad, he concludes triumphantly. The crowd applauds this impressive demonstration of judicial wisdom. You're invited to present your defense, which consists of repeating that you didn't steal any egg, that you have your own chickens, and that this entire situation is a misunderstanding based on paranoia and community boredom. Your defense is heard respectfully and then completely ignored. Lord Stupidity consults his vast legal experience, which consists of saw a trial once, and reaches a verdict. Guilty, he announces, almost falling off the chair in the process. The punishment will be... He looks around for inspiration. His eyes land on the village pillory, flogging 15 lashes, and... He pauses dramatically, clearly proud of his judicial creativity, and branding on the forehead, so everyone knows this man is an egg thief. The crowd explodes in approval. It's a sentence that combines physical pain, public humiliation, and permanent disfigurement. Everything a good medieval punishment should include. You try to appeal, but appeals don't exist in the feudal judicial system. The Lord's word is final, especially when he's drunk and irritated. Execution of the sentence begins immediately. You're tied to the pillory, a wooden structure designed specifically to keep criminals in a convenient position for public flogging. Your hands and head are trapped in holes that were sized for the average medieval person, who apparently had smaller hands than yours. The wood squeezes your wrists painfully. The official executor, basically the village guy, who most enjoys hitting people, prepares his whip. It's a handcrafted work of art, braided leather with metal tips designed to maximize pain without causing immediate death. He practices a few movements in the air, and you can hear the whip cutting through wind with a sound that promises agony. The first lash tears through your back, through the tunic. The pain is immediate and total, as if someone had drawn a line of fire across your skin. The crowd counts 1. You scream involuntarily, which makes the crowd applaud appreciatively. Quality entertainment is being provided. Lash number 2 and 3 follow quickly. Your tunic now has holes where the whip cut the fabric, and you can feel hot blood running down your back. With each blow, the crowd counts enthusiastically, as if it were a particularly violent work song. Some people are clearly having more fun than others. Small children watch with fascination, learning valuable lessons about community justice. On the 10th lash, you can no longer stand properly. Your legs tremble, and your vision is blurring. The executor pauses considerately to allow you to recover, not because he cares about your well-being, but because whipping someone unconscious is less satisfying for the audience. It's medieval professionalism at its best. The last 5 lashes are particularly artistic. The executor varies angle and force to create an interesting pattern of wounds on your back. When he finally finishes, you look like you've been attacked by a wild animal with talent for graphic design. Blood drips from wounds, mixing with sweat and tears in a salty paste that sticks to your torn clothes. But wait, there's still the branding. An iron shaped like T for thief has been heated in the fire until red hot. The executor approaches with the smoking iron, and you know the next few seconds will redefine your understanding of physical pain. The iron is pressed against your forehead, and the sound of your own scalp frying will be something you'll hear in nightmares for years to come. The smell of burnt flesh spreads through the crowd, and some people make appreciative comments about the branding quality. It's a clean, well-defined mark that will be visible forever, ensuring you can never lie about your status as a convicted criminal. It's medieval branding, literally. You're released from the pillory and immediately collapse. Your first attempt to stand fails completely. Your legs can't support your weight. The crowd watches with interest while you struggle to compose yourself, some offering helpful comments about your lack of dignity. And then, in a decision you'll immediately recognize as the worst of your life, you decide to run. Maybe it's trauma, maybe it's despair, or maybe it's simply the realization that your life in the village is officially over. But you manage to get up and start running. It's not an impressive run, more like a stumbling trot of someone who just got whipped 15 times, but it's technically escape. The crowd falls silent for a moment, processing this unexpected development. Then someone shouts, "He's escaping!" and the real fun begins. Chase is even more exciting than execution, especially when the prey is wounded and has little chance of escape. You have no plan, no destination, and no idea where you're running. Where can a medieval person flee? There are no maps, no adequate roads, no safe places for people without official documentation. You're basically running randomly through the landscape, hoping to find, what? A different society that doesn't care about criminal marks on foreheads? Behind you, you hear the sound of improvised military organization. Lord Stupidity, suddenly sober with hunt excitement, is organizing an official search. Men on horseback tracking dogs, and a considerable portion of the village are preparing to turn your escape into an educational experience about the futility of challenging feudal authority. The dogs arrive first. Medieval dogs trained to hunt aren't the friendly golden retrievers you know. They're hungry, aggressive beasts that consider chasing wounded people a particularly pleasant form of exercise. You can hear them barking with growing enthusiasm as they follow your blood trail through the forest. You run through trees, through streams, through terrain that further destroys your already wounded back. Branches tear your clothes and skin, stones cut your feet through inadequate shoes, and your breathing begins to sound like a rusty saw. Each step is agony, but stopping means capture, and capture means additional punishment for trying to escape. The horsemen arrive an hour later, following the sound of dogs. Men mounted on well-fed horses, carrying ropes and weapons, treating this entire chase as fun sport. To them, you're not a desperate person trying to escape injustice. You're a fox in a fox hunt, providing equestrian entertainment. Capture, when it finally happens, is almost a relief. You collapse in a clearing, unable to run another step, and the horsemen surround you with the casual efficiency of people who do this regularly. The dogs are called back before they can bite you seriously. You need to be conscious for additional punishment. Ropes are tied around your wrists with unnecessary force. A chain is connected to your neck, officially transforming you into mobile property. The walk back to the village is a triumphal procession where you're the main attraction, dragged behind horses like a particularly pathetic hunting trophy. The entire village comes out to see your return. Children run alongside the procession, shouting creative insults. Adults make comments about how you look even worse than before, which is a considerable achievement. Your own family watches in silence, knowing that association with you now makes them suspect by extension. You tried to escape. Bad idea. Very bad idea. Now you're not just an egg thief. You're an egg thief who challenged feudal authority by trying to escape justice. This puts you in a completely new criminal category, one that comes with correspondingly creative punishments. Lord Stupidity, now completely sober and extremely irritated from being forced to exercise, announces your new sentence: additional forced labor, permanent restriction to village limits, and constant supervision by guards who will be paid with what remains of your personal property. You're officially less free than farm animals, and so ends the worst day of your medieval life, tied up, wounded, branded, humiliated, and now under permanent surveillance in a society that didn't like you when you were just another anonymous peasant. But hey, at least you're still alive, technically, for now. And so we come to the end of your journey as a medieval peasant, an experience that completely redefined your concepts of suffering, injustice, and basic survival. Congratulations for surviving a full day in the Middle Ages, for now. If you really were a medieval peasant, you'd have roughly 10,950 more similar days ahead before dying at 30 years of age, assuming you have the extraordinary luck to avoid plague, famine, war, work accidents, medieval medicine, and witchcraft accusations. Let's take stock of what you accomplished today. You woke up in a parasite-infested bed, ate porridge with questionable ingredients, washed with brown water shared by others, worked 16 hours with tools that looked more like torture instruments, survived medical suggestions that included drilling holes in your skull, avoided being burned as a witch, spent 6 months freezing while sharing house with farm animals, had fun watching public executions, were falsely accused of stealing an egg, were publicly flogged and branded, desperately tried to escape, were captured by tracking dogs, and are now chained as property of a drunk feudal lord. It's an impressive resume of experiences that would make any modern person seriously question their complaints about slow Wi-Fi or cold coffee. Next time you get irritated because your delivery app took 40 minutes, remember, at least you weren't publicly flogged for a crime you didn't commit, while a crowd of neighbors applauded enthusiastically. Medieval life statistics are genuinely shocking when you stop to consider the real numbers. Average life expectancy was approximately 28 to 30 years, and that included people who had the extraordinary luck to be born into nobility with access to adequate food and protection from strenuous physical work. For peasants like you, expectancy was even lower. Most people died before seeing their 25th birthday. Child mortality was approximately 50% in the first 5 years of life. This means half of all children born never reached adolescence. Main causes of child death included malnutrition, diseases that today would be cured with basic antibiotics, domestic accidents, and occasionally medical treatment. Having children in the Middle Ages was basically a lottery where odds were definitely against you. Maternal mortality during childbirth was absurdly high. Approximately 1 in 4 women died during or shortly after birth. Giving birth was literally playing biological Russian roulette. Women who survived frequently faced permanent complications that affected the rest of their already difficult lives. Birth control didn't exist, so women faced this deadly lottery repeatedly during their reproductive years. Quality of life, even for those lucky enough to survive to adulthood, was consistently miserable by modern standards. Chronic pain was universal, backs destroyed by physical work, early arthritis, dental problems causing serious infections, and wounds that never healed properly. Everyone lived with some level of constant pain because effective painkillers didn't exist. Malnutrition was so common, it was considered normal. What medieval peasants called hunger would be considered severe malnutrition by modern doctors. What they considered well-fed would be considered undernourished by contemporary standards. Their diets consisted mainly of simple carbohydrates with occasional protein and virtually no fresh vitamins. Scurvy, rickets, and other nutritional deficiency diseases were epidemic. And here's the most depressing statistic of all. Your children, if you manage to have them, and they survive childhood, will have exactly the same miserable life you had. There's no upward social mobility in feudal society. There's no education that can change your status. There's no technological innovation that makes work easier. There's no hope that the next generation will have a better life than yours. The cycle repeats infinitely. Born as serf, work until death as serf, produce children who will be serfs, die young from hard work and miserable conditions. It's a social system designed to keep everyone at the same level of misery generation after generation, forever. The only variation is what specific type of suffering each person will experience during their brief existence. But let's put this in perspective with your modern life. You're complaining because you have to work 8 hours a day. Medieval peasants worked 16 hours 7 days a week, without vacation, without sick leave, without retirement. You're irritated because your apartment is small? Entire medieval families lived in a single room with their farm animals. You think your internet is slow? Medievals didn't know other parts of the world existed. Your complaint about expensive restaurant food seems absurd when compared to people who ate dubious porridge 3 times a day when they were lucky. Your annoyance with heavy traffic loses perspective when you consider people who never traveled more than 5 kilometers from where they were born during their entire lives. Your frustration with broken air conditioning is nothing compared to people who spent months freezing in houses without adequate heating. Modern medical care, even with all its problems, is literally miraculous compared to medieval medicine. You complain about waiting 2 hours in the emergency room? At least your doctor washed his hands, studied basic anatomy, and doesn't plan to solve your headache by making holes in your skull. Antibiotics, painkillers, anesthesia, clean surgery. All these are innovations that made it possible to live beyond 30 years without constant pain. Universal education is another miracle you probably take for granted. In the Middle Ages, 99% of people couldn't read or write. Knowledge was controlled by a small elite that used widespread ignorance to maintain social control. The fact that you can read this story about medieval peasants already puts you in a privileged category that would include less than 1% of medieval population. Basic human rights, freedom of speech, movement, religion, marriage simply didn't exist for common people. You literally belonged to the feudal lord and needed permission to do anything significant in your life. Democracy, impartial justice, due process, concepts completely foreign in a society where a drunk noble's word was absolute law. Modern technology has completely transformed the basic human experience. Electricity means you can have light after sunset without risking death by fire. Plumbing means you can drink water without dying of dysentery, and can use bathrooms not shared with pigs. Refrigeration means your food doesn't rot immediately and doesn't need to be preserved in salt or smoke. Modern communication allows you to speak instantly with people on the other side of the world. Modern transportation allows you to travel distances medievals would consider geographically impossible. Modern medicine allows you to survive injuries and diseases that would be automatic death sentences 700 years ago. But perhaps the biggest difference is psychological. You live in a society where it's possible to have hope that the future will be better than the present. You can make long-term plans, can change careers, can move to another place, can choose whom to marry. You have agency over your own life in ways that would be completely incomprehensible to a medieval peasant. The Middle Ages were genuinely a dark era, not because it lacked romantic knights and picturesque castles, but because daily existence for most people was a constant struggle against hunger, disease, violence, and premature death. It was a society organized to benefit a small elite at the expense of a mass of people condemned to hereditary misery. So, next time you complain about your bed being uncomfortable, remember your straw bed full of lice and rats. When you get irritated with your shower being too hot or too cold, think about your experience washing with cold brown water using dirty rags. When you get annoyed because your coffee doesn't have the exact taste you wanted, recall your oat porridge with mysterious lumps floating on the surface. Your modern life, even with all its legitimate problems, is literally paradise compared to the existence 95% of humanity experienced during most of history. You live better than medieval kings in terms of physical comfort, medical care, food variety, and life expectancy. And now, after this relaxing journey through the historical nightmare that was medieval life, You can lie in your comfortable bed with clean sheets in a room heated or cooled to ideal temperature, knowing that tomorrow you'll wake up to a day that may not be perfect, but certainly won't include public flogging, witchcraft accusations, or work until fainting from exhaustion. Sleep well, and be grateful for sleeping in a real bed, in a house with plumbing, in a society where stealing eggs doesn't result in branding on the forehead with hot iron. Your nightmares tonight will just be bad dreams, not memories of a normal day in the Middle Ages. Congratulations for surviving the experience of being a medieval peasant, even if only in imagination. In real life, the chances of you making it this far were astronomically low. Good night, and remember, at least you don't have to share your bed with pigs, rats, and an entire family in a freezing hut.